You don't build confidence from just winning. You build it by learning. In this episode, I'll walk you through the Reflect journaling process, a post-game tool that helps athletes grow from every experience and build trust in themselves, one rep at a time. Welcome to Confident Common Clutch Car Ride Conversations. I'm your host, Valerie Alston, here to help parents and young athletes spark meaningful dialogue about mental toughness, resilience, and confidence. Whether you're headed to practice a game or just running errands around town, this podcast is your go-to for building stronger relationships and lifelong skills, one car ride at a time. So let's dive in. All right, y'all. So last week we discussed the concept of your self-talk, that making sure that the conversation in your head is working for you, not against you, as it relates to building your confidence. Today, we're going to talk about the source of confidence, which is your personal experience. And this is one of the research shows that this is the biggest source of confidence in the sense of it's the place where you have the most content, the most places to pull from to enhance your confidence. Okay. So your personal experience. What have you done? What preparation have you done? Okay. So the more you do something, the more experience you have with something, the more data you have available to you, and the more learning opportunities you have to grow and to develop. And so typically, the more you learn, the more you develop, the more trust you start to have, right? That sense of certainty in your own abilities. When you've proved to yourself that you can do something because you've worked hard to train it and develop it, that gives you the proof essentially to be confident because clearly I've done it before. Okay. But your prior experience, it's not a requirement for you to have had success. Any experience doing something, whether you had a success or you failed, is valuable because it teaches you something. It either tells you if you were successful, what you should repeat, like what worked, what and how can you repeat that, make that success happen again. But most and many, not all, but many of our personal experiences are failure moments where we were unsuccessful. And believe it or not, those are also fantastic sources of confidence because you're now learning how to do something more effectively. There's the all-time famous quote from Thomas Edison is that he didn't fail when trying to learn how to create a light bulb, build a light bulb. He found 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. And so after each iteration, he was even more and more confident that he would figure out how to make a light bulb because he's tested all these other theories that aren't working. Right. And so I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but your failure helps you understand what works and what doesn't. And the more you fail, the more there's fewer opportunities left that are obviously going to be more successful. I know it's can seem weird for you, but multiple failures can be fuel and give you the insight and the information that you need in order to be successful moving forward. Okay. And so the only way that you can really pull on your previous experience is to have a really intentional process of reflecting on your previous experience. Just because you've done something before does not mean it's going to help you build confidence if you're not doing anything with that information. If you flush it every time you've done something and you don't reflect and you don't think about, well, what did I learn? Then that previous experience isn't necessarily doing you any good because you're not mining it for the gold, right? You're not thinking about how to use that previous experience to help you moving forward. Okay. So I want to introduce you to a cool acronym. I actually learned this recently. I've had other ways of doing it. I've always preached that you need to reflect after performance. I work for the Army, and this is something that they do. It's called the after action review. Almost after every exercise or training event that they do an after action review. And what it is, they talk about their sustains and their improves. What worked, sustains. What do we need to sustain, keep doing? What tactics, what procedures, what processes, what worked? What do we need to keep doing because obviously it was successful? And what didn't work? What were the strategies, the techniques, or the failure moments that led to ineffective performance. Okay. And I've realized over my time, oh, that's how they learn so much so quickly is because they're taking time after every training event to actually deliberately reflect. And so I want to bring to you a reflection process that will help you mine all of your previous experiences for gold. Okay. Now it's great because it's an acronym called REFLECT. Right? It's perfect. It's what you need to do, and each letter of REFLECT stands for something. And if you're a total nerd like me and totally into Aretha Franklin, you want to just sing to the tune of Respect, RESPCT, right? REFE, REFLECT. That's what it means to me. Suck it to me, suck it to me. Yeah, maybe? No? Okay. All right. I'm just singing in my bedroom here. Here we go. So let's go through the acronym of reflect. The first R is recall the events. Okay. So you need to think backwards to the event, your performance, your practice, the end of a drill, whatever you're doing, and say, what happened? Okay. What? And fact based. Okay. You're trying to, as if you watched it on CCTV and you're just narrating what happened. I got up to the plate and I struck out looking because after battling after 4 or 5 pitches, I was anticipating the changeup and she threw a rise ball, something along those lines, whatever. You're just trying to name what happened. I was at the free throw line. I was super nervous. My body was out of whack and my hands were shaking and that affected my shot or something like that, right? So it's just what happened. Being neutral. There's no judgments here. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. Remember, because every single opportunity is a learning opportunity. So you got to recall what happened. Okay, that's R, recall. E is what were your emotions that you experienced during or immediately after that event? Okay. And there's no judgment here. You have the right to feel whatever you have felt: joy, elation, excitement, pride, fear, frustration, anxiety, worry, disappointment. Okay. So obviously, those emotions will probably be different based on if it was a success versus a failure. But during the performance, what emotions were you experiencing? Again, that's information. You're going to start to find certain emotions are more helpful for you than others. A simple example of this is in football, right? For a linebacker, let's say, who's trying to tackle somebody. Like being calm and zened out is not an effective emotion, right? They need to aggress. They literally have to go like rock somebody's world. Being angry actually is really helpful for that, or being aggressive is right. So understanding that not all emotions are, they're not, first off, none of them are good or bad. It's all about productive, right? Did the emotion I was experiencing, was it productive for me in this moment or not? Okay. So no judgment. That's E, emotions. F is for focus and thoughts. And focus, what we're asking you to reflect on is what were you paying attention to in the performance? What things were you attending to? So if you're a running back in football, like where were your eyes? What were you looking for? Did you see the gaps as a softball player playing in the field? Were you anticipating where the ball was going to get hit? Like, just what types of things were you paying attention to? And again, was it working or not? This also is a place to assess your thinking. What types of thoughts were you having? Okay. And so that F is focus. You're just trying to figure out what things was my brain thinking about and paying attention to. Okay. Now we start getting into learning moments. So L of reflect is learning moments. And you're asking yourself what went well, what didn't. Okay, based on your recalling the events, the emotions, and the thoughts that you had, what worked and what didn't. Okay, so you're just assessing the things that you've just come up with. Your next E is evaluate strategies. This is more related to like techniques or routines or like a strategy that you employed, strategy that you attempted to use in a game, in tactics, if you will, of your sport. What worked and what didn't. Because again, the assumption is that you might play this team again, or you might face this opponent again. And if so, what worked and what didn't? You need like tactical wise, technique wise. Okay. So evaluate the strategies that you employed during the game. And did it work or did it not? This also doesn't have to be game focused. This could be after a drill and you're working on something physically, and maybe you tried something different with your footwork. And you're like, oh, that actually was really helpful. I'm going to do that again. Okay. So again, this isn't just for after games, but anytime you do something, taking a moment to reflect. Okay. So that's E, evaluate your strategies. C, now we're starting to move towards moving from learning into action. Okay. So C is create an action plan. Based on what you just learned from the thinking process, reflecting process, what will you do next? So if you are doing a drill and you realize your footwork that you played with was actually very helpful, what's your plan for the next session, right? The next drill is, okay, I'm going to do that footwork again and confirm that it was helpful, right? Or maybe you struck out as a batter and you realize the reason you struck out was because you were anticipating what pitch was coming next instead of just reading and reacting to the ball. Okay, so next time I'm going to say my phrase, see ball, hit ball, and I am not going to think about what pitch is coming next. Instead, I'm going to just focus on reading and reacting, something like that, right? Hey, last game in basketball, we played this defense. I don't know enough about basketball, but it didn't work because this certain player kept beating it. We didn't adjust. So what are we doing next game? We're going to do this different type of defense, right? So the action plan is, what are you taking from what you learned and what are you going to implement, right? What's the new action that you're going to take if you were unsuccessful? Or what are you going to repeat if you were successful? What should you repeat and do again because it worked? Okay. So what's that action plan? And then finally, you want to track your progress over time. The T in reflect is track progress. You should be tracking. And when I say track progress, I'm talking like metrics or anything that you're assessing yourself on, like to how you're doing. What are you tracking? Okay. So in softball, that could be stats, and it could also be maybe a confidence score. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 5 today, 1 being zero confidence, 5 being I was in it. I had all the self-belief. Today I was at a 4. Okay, great. So you just need to find ways to measure your progress and keep track of that progress. Okay. And by doing the reflect process, the prior steps, keep the data. Okay. This is really important for 2 reasons. One, you start to assess patterns when you're, instead of just looking on each individual performance. Let's say you've been using the reflect journaling for a month, and now you can go back and look at it all and start to see patterns like, oh, I realize that these types of emotions tend not to be helpful for me. So I need to avoid those emotions, right? Or something along those lines. So it gives you data to reflect on patterns. But the other thing it does is it gives you data and proof and reasons to be confident. If you've got all of this data that says, I am getting better, in fact, I have gotten so much better, or I see now what I need to do to be successful, that becomes the proof and the reasons to be confident. Okay. And so it's really important that you take note of your successes and your failures, because your successes tend to build confidence and your failures build competence. They help you get better, which in turn helps you be more successful, which will eventually lead to more confidence. Okay. So reflect. We want you to recall the event. E is for emotions. What did you experience? F is for focus and thoughts. What were you thinking? L is what were the learning moments? E, evaluate your strategies. C, create an action plan. T, track it. Right? Write it down, track it, do something. Okay. Now, the goal is not to do this. You don't need to spend more than 5 to 10 minutes doing this. Okay. Obviously, it'll depend on how long or how big of an event it was. You know what? So the difference, if you're just reviewing a drill that you did at practice and the drill took 20 minutes, you're probably not going to spend more than a couple minutes thinking about it. Whereas if you're thinking about an entire tournament, a weekend long tournament, maybe you're going to spend 20 minutes doing this. Okay. But the goal is succinct, right? You're not trying to dwell on it for the sake of beating yourself up. The goal is to learn. Okay. So keep it short and make it a time frame that makes sense for you based on the length and I don't want to say severity of the situation, but length and importance of the situation is better. You can use a journal, a little composition notebook. You can do a voice memo. I don't prefer voice memos unless it's actually transcribing, because it's much harder to like quickly scan back and see. So if you're going to use voice, I would say make sure it's transcribed in some way. If you have an app that you like, the Notes app on your phone would be wonderful. You can do this. If you're really interested, I have in the show notes, I have a downloadable journal that you can use. It's just a PDF to give you some guidance on what to reflect on. Again, if you want that, it's in the show notes. Just click the link. It'll take you to the download. But the most important thing when you're using this reflect process is about consistency. It's not about perfection. It's not about, you might forget from time to time, but if you can commit to more often than not, after you've performed, whether in practice or games, reflect on that, you're going to be more successful because you're going to learn, you're going to be much more purposeful in your learning, which will help you gain confidence more quickly. Okay. And skill, quite frankly. All right. So before we dive into the conversation prompts for today, again, I just want to kindly ask you is that if you are enjoying this conversation, these podcast episodes, please leave a review. That just helps the podcast get seen and it helps inform me what types of episodes you're really appreciating. All right, y'all. So let's dive into the conversation. Always a quick reminder of the rules. There are no wrong answers. Take turns talking and listening. Make sure you're as distraction free as possible. And of always, you can either listen to all of the questions and talk about them, or you can pause the episode after each individual question and discuss it. Okay. Let's dive into our first question. Let's just do this in the car. What is something that you learned about yourself from your last game and or practice? Okay, talk about it. Do a mini reflect process in the car. Right? What's something you learned? Question 2. Generally, when you mess up, what helps you move forward rather than dwell on it? So the goal of reflect is to understand what went wrong and move forward quickly, but sometimes we can get stuck in just thinking about what went wrong. And that's not productive, that's not helpful. So we don't want to dwell on it, but what helps you move forward? Okay? And talk about that with your parents because they can help you shift you out of that because it's very normal to stew on moments of failure, right? That's a typical human response. We keep reflecting, what could I've done and how did I do? That's a normal thing. It's just not particularly productive beyond learning. Once you've mined it for the things that you need to know, coming back to it over and over again just isn't helpful. It just degrades your confidence, makes you more anxious. And it's not particularly helpful. Okay. So, what do you think you could do when you mess up to help you move forward? Question number 3. Which part of the reflect process feels most useful to you right now? Maybe you're already doing parts of it, maybe not, but if it feels overwhelming to do all of the reflect steps, what's the piece that you want to start immediately implementing that you think would help you right now? Okay. 4th question. What role would you like your parents to play in this process? Is this something that you think they could help you with? Is this something that you want to do alone? Is this something that you want to like create rules around of, hey, immediately after a game, we're not doing this on the car ride home? Right? Because sometimes it's just too soon, you're too raw, and that's okay. You want to reflect soon enough after the event that you still remember everything, but it does not need to be immediately, especially if the emotions are pretty high and you're frustrated, like not a lot of learning. It does sometimes it just calm down first, sleep on it, relax a little bit. So timing does matter, but think about how you can do this together as a family. What ways can your parents support you in doing this? What do you imagine to be the left and right limits in the sense of here's how we're going to do it in a way that doesn't turn into interrogation and make me hate sport. Okay, because that's not good either. All right, y'all. Remember to keep those conversations rolling and let's make those car rides count. Thank you so much for joining me on Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. Again, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with at least one other parent or coach that you know that you think could benefit from this conversation. If you're looking for more weekly tips and mindset shifts and other conversation prompts to help you or your athlete stay confident, calm, and clutch no matter what's going on, please consider subscribing to my newsletter at www.confidentcalmclutch.com/newsletter. And if you have any suggestions for new topics that you would like to hear or talk about, there's a link in my show notes that you just share your ideas. Happy to hear from you. You can also DM me on Facebook or Instagram at Alston Coaching. Okay. And I absolutely look forward to hearing from you so we can continue these conversations and make sure we're having conversations that you want to have. All right, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful day.